Perfect time. Perfect time. Well, let's take a moment to reflect just a little bit, to kind of become aware of what it is we're carrying tonight as we come together, as we prepare to meditate, and as we prepare to share the teachings of the Dhamma. So it is helpful to just take a brief inventory sometimes of, is there anything I'm carrying that might be a hindrance in my practice tonight or in my meditation? And if so, is that something I can let go of, at least temporarily? So we might look at any of the excitement we're carrying about projects we're working on, or concerns we have about issues in our lives or in our families or relationships. So this is not a generation of denial or a pretending that these things don't exist, but this is really a healthy way of being able to say, oh yes, these things are part of my consciousness, and in some ways they prevent me from really letting go and from really allowing myself to move to a space of deep tranquility and peacefulness. So can I set them down temporarily, letting go of them as obstacles, and just working on myself in a very positive, wholesome way for a period of an hour and a half. So we might let go of those things mindfully, and then we might be mindful of what it is we want to cultivate in our meditation practice together. And those things, so often we describe them as compassion, as loving kindness, as appreciative joy, and as equanimity, that letting go of craving and clinging and aversion, which so often holds us back from real release into peace and freedom. So with that, I'll sound this bell. Let there be peace. Let there be peace. Namaskar. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Well, if you want to take a couple of minutes to get comfortable, grab cushions or mats or make any adjustments. Yeah.
Just usually have it back there.
Yeah. Grab Kleenex, make any adjustments
They're
necessary.
running out. At the end of the year, the kids have to bring a container, beginning of the year. Oh, well.
Yeah, they usually have a pretty good stockpile in the
Towel.
beginning, and yeah.
I got some in my purse.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Nice. Because when we
I
close
didn't
our
hear what
eyes,
you were
my
looking
eyes start
for. I've got
watering.
one
Oh,
here.
sure.
When we're meditating, this is like,
You're crying.
Yeah.
yeah, it's like I'm going to sleep or something.
Yeah. No, my eyes water
Thanks.
frequently when I meditate.
Yeah,
And they do that
so
too.
it's
Sometimes
annoying.
Why?
sometimes I blot them dry.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's what I wanted.
Every once in a while, it has a little bit of a feeling of almost tears of joy. There's just sort of that overwhelming
try this.
peacefulness and that
Don't lay
feeling.
down.
So,
No snoring. No snoring. Yeah. No snoring. Okay.
Throw water on you. Throw your cold water on you.
yeah.
You snore, I'll dump the water on you.
What?
Said if you start snoring, I'll dump your
Don't you
water.
dare, that's too cold. I just pulled it out of the fridge.
Sure. Well, it's good to try. Good to try different positions. You know, it's you don't have to be stuck with doing the same thing each time. It's good to experiment, see what else might work for you, and of course, you can always get up and sit again during the meditation if that would be more comfortable. So. I'm going to say this one more time just because I'm recording this now, and this will go on the, this will get uploaded to the website, but we will have one more class here next week, Tuesday the 16th, and then beginning Tuesday the 23rd, we'll be at the new location, the Meditation Center. And I'm going to see about posting, some directions to the site, the address, and that sort of thing. I haven't put that up on the site yet, just because there hasn't really been much of a reason to yet. But I'll get all of that on there and on the site. So, if everybody is relatively comfy, it's helpful to check in with the body before we start meditating and just see if there's any obvious areas of tension. See if there's any places that are maybe a little achy or painy right now, because you might want to address those before we go into the meditation. Just try to find a way to sit or lay where there is no conflict in the body. Find a place for your hands to rest comfortably, whether it's at your sides or on your lap. Let the eyes close softly. Let the breath just be natural through the nose, in and out as it wants to come. And now I'll sound the bell and I'll start to guide us through the practice. Follow the wonderful sound of the bell as it fades into silence. And let the bell be an invitation to turn your senses inward. Let the silence be an invitation to turn your senses inward. Just consciously let go of the tendency of the mind to be projected outward, to be curious and to be thinking. Instead, just focus on your experience of being present in your own body right now. Just check in with that. Get in touch with that feeling of being here, occupying your body, being present. There's a real peacefulness and stability in just that. Just getting in touch with the feeling of being here now. Establish that sense of presence. And with that sense of presence established, let's bring the awareness up to the top of the head and to the area of the scalp. And for a few moments here, just let yourself become aware of any physical sensations in the scalp. So there's nothing that you're supposed to be feeling, nothing that you're waiting for. You're just opening up your consciousness to the sensations that make themselves known. So you find that by pausing and observing attentively for a few moments, that you might become aware of temperature sensations, temperature on the scalp, or temperature as atmosphere in the room. Sometimes there are sensations of air movement. Sometimes there are sensations on the surface of the skin. They might be tickles or itches or feelings of pulsation. And don't be concerned about trying to name the different sensations or classify them in some way. Just let yourself have the experience. This is the feeling in the scalp at this moment in time. Observe as it arises. Observe as it passes away. If you become aware of tension anywhere in the scalp, you can respond to that tension by simply letting go. No other reaction is necessary, just a noticing and releasing. Allow the tension to leave the body. And then we'll lower the awareness from the scalp down into the forehead. See if you can feel that movement of awareness from the scalp down to the forehead. And feel it moving into the temples. Feel it moving down through the eyebrows and into the eyes. And so now in these 4 areas of the body, once again, just become aware of physical sensations. Nothing more. No judgment is required. Not a lot of thought is required. It's just being aware, noticing, observing. Again, temperature sensations, air movement, sensations on the surface of the skin. These are the common manifestations of sensation. If there's tension anywhere, whether the brow is furrowed, or there is tightness in the temples, or in the eyebrows or eyes, again, just respond to that in a very skillful way, which is to let it go. No other reaction is necessary. Awareness allows you to observe the tension, and you can just let it go. Watch as it leaves the body. And then from the temples, you can begin to guide the awareness downward into the ears. Once again, see if you can feel that movement of awareness. Once the awareness is in the ears, become aware of the different sensations. The ears are very sensitive parts of the body, so you might encounter a variety of sensations. And then move the awareness from the ears forward into the cheekbones and into the face. From the eyes, allow the awareness to move downward, passing through the nose and down through the lips and mouth and chin. In each of these areas, as the awareness moves through, you're simply noticing the sensations, just observing, noticing how they arise and pass away, how they are always changing. You might notice tension in some of these areas. Sometimes the jaws are tight. Sometimes the teeth are clenched a little bit. If you discover this tension, just let it go. Let it leave the body. Smile as the tension exits the body. You are being compassionate with yourself. Smile. Be happy. Continue to observe the sensations throughout the face. And then we'll let the awareness move downward from the chin down into the neck. Feel it moving through the throat, the front part of the neck, the sensations, and then through the sides of the neck and the back of the neck. Just noticing all the different sensations, temperature, air movement, tingling, pulsation. You may become aware of the feeling of contact between your neck and the floor, the cushion, or the chair. Let any tension go. Feel now as the awareness moves downward into the shoulders. Feel that movement of awareness. Become aware of the sensations that are illuminated by this awareness. And let the shoulders drop. Let the shoulders relax. Allow the awareness to flow downward into the upper arms. Again, feel that movement of awareness. Sometimes you find that you really can feel that. Just feel that movement. Sort of a soothing, warm flow. And when it moves into an area, it illuminates the different sensations. In the upper arms, become aware of the biceps. Become aware of the sensations there and the tension. And if there's tension, just release. And even if you don't notice tension, it's a good idea to release it anyway. Find that you become even more peaceful. Moving to the inside part of the upper arms now. Noticing and releasing. And then the back part of the upper arms. And then the outside part of the upper arms, noticing and releasing. Allow the awareness to move down through the elbow joints. Feel it moving through the forearms, traveling down toward the wrists. And by now, you should be fairly well into the cycle of just moving awareness, noticing the sensations, immediately letting go of tension and remaining present with the sensations. And just let this be the way you move through the body now. Moving through the wrists and into the hands. And observing the different parts of the hands, starting with the heels of the hands, and then the palms, moving around to the tops of the hands, and then through the thumbs and fingers. Then you can take a moment to move your awareness into the fingernails, the fingertips. Take a little time there, see if you notice any sensations. And then from the tips of the fingers, we will bring our awareness up to the top of the chest, beginning with the collarbones, and we'll start to allow the awareness to flow downward. Feel it moving through the chest. Feel it moving all the way down to the base of the sternum, and then outward through the rib cage. Again, this is just a simple awareness of sensation and noticing and letting go of tension. And then bringing the awareness to the underarms. Feel it as it moves down through the sides of the body, all the way down to the waist. Just feel that warm movement of awareness. It's almost like a warm, loving embrace in some ways, just moving through this unconditional awareness, this acceptance of what is true in the body, this wholesome response to tension, which is just to release it in a compassionate way. And then from the waist, bring the awareness forward into the belly and begin to focus on the movement of the belly up and down with the breath. expanding and contracting with the breath. And notice the different sensations in the belly. Notice any tension, very common in the belly, and let that go. Let your belly be soft and free. And then from the belly, we'll move the awareness around to the top of the back. You can start at the base of the neck there and let the awareness flow downward through the upper third of the back, through the shoulder blades. Just be aware of the different sensations. Sensations of contact, sensations of bearing weight, sensations in the muscles or on the surface of the skin. Sometimes the sensations we encounter might be unpleasant, or they might be difficult. And our first reaction to them might be to sort of push them away psychologically, not wanting to experience difficult sensations. But one of the things we can do is to just open our awareness and to expand it further and further. Notice the difficult sensations in the body wherever they are, but also notice this infinite capacity to allow these sensations to be just as they are. Even though they may be unpleasant, there is no need to develop aversion towards them or try to reject them. Just allow them all the space they need to be as they are. Let go of the tension around them and just continue to move your awareness through. You can repeat that process in the middle third of the back now. You can let the awareness drift further down into the lower third of the back, again repeating that process. And as we move through the other parts of the body, if you discover unpleasant sensations or difficult sensations, try that simple practice of allowing things to be just as they are without rejecting or disliking. Allow all the space necessary for things to be as they are. Let your awareness move down into your sit bones now, into your hips. Feel it moving through your pelvis. Observe all the different sensations in these areas of the body and meet any tension with unconditional release. Just let go. Don't raise up any energy toward tension in the body. Do the reverse, in fact, which is to just allow, let the tension leave the body. Moving from the pelvis now, you can feel your awareness moving down into your thighs. And the thighs are large muscle groups in the body. Spend a little time examining the different parts, the top surface of the thighs, from the top all the way down to the knees, and then the outside edge of the thighs, again from the tops down to the knees, and then the back side. Finally, the inside of the thighs, from the tops down to the knees, observing sensations without judgment, and letting tension go. And let the awareness flow down through the knee joints now. If these are areas where you experience difficult sensations, again, be aware. Don't generate any animosity or ill will toward the difficult sensations. Allow space. Embrace the difficult sensations with tolerance and compassion, and even love as you allow it to leave the body. Moving down now, feeling awareness traveling through the calves, through the shins, downward through the ankles. Feel it as it travels down into the feet now. Really notice how the awareness illuminates all these different parts of the feet, the heels, sensations there, and then moving into the soles of the feet, moving into the balls of the feet, and then moving around to the top surface of the feet, slowly moving down into the toes, and then into the toenails. Take a few minutes to just observe the toenails, taking note of any sensations that you become aware of. Let go of tension over and over with love and compassion. And from the toes now, we'll bring our awareness once again up to the top of the head. And at this point, you can just begin to guide your awareness back down through your body. From the top of the head, through the scalp, through the face. Just move it downward slowly. Feel all the different areas. Spend at least a moment with each part of the body, observing and releasing. Notice the different places where tension has returned, or maybe tension has appeared for the first time during this sit. And be aware of these areas of tension and release them over and over with compassion and with kindness and love, and without having to judge them or evaluate them, just setting them free. And remember that one of the habit patterns of the mind is to hold tension in the body and associate it with difficult emotions, strong emotions, fears, worries, anxieties. And oftentimes the mind will move on to different thoughts, different tasks, different activities, but the tension will remain in the body, and it sort of echoes those difficult emotions over and over. Sometimes we have a feeling of dis-ease or anxiety, and we really can't even place why it's there or what it came from. Well, this is often caused by this tension in the body. So notice it and just release it over and over, knowing that you're releasing these difficult emotions along with the tension. And as a matter of practice, you can just do that over and over throughout the day, whether you're meditating or just performing normal daily functions. Notice where that tension is and give it safe passage out of the body. And then once you've moved your awareness through your body at least one more time, noticing those sensations and releasing the tension, Let's bring the awareness up to the base of the nose, to the philtrum, the little patch of skin beneath the nostrils and above the upper lip. Then expand it a little further into the rings of the nostrils. And then just a little further into the nasal passages. So now you can imagine this triangular area of the nose. This triangular area. And with your awareness focused here, just become aware of the movement of the breath in and out. Just a very simple thing to focus on. When you're breathing in through the nose, just be aware that you're breathing in. And when you're breathing out through the nose, just be aware that you're breathing out. Just this simple awareness of the movement of the breath. Breathing in, breathing out. And as you breathe in and out, try to stay with the breath for its full duration. So knowing that you're breathing in, being with that in-breath as it slows and pauses, and then it becomes the out-breath. Stay with the out-breath as it moves and slows and pauses, and it becomes the in-breath. Just remain with this movement of the breath. And as you continue to observe, open up the awareness to the sensation of touch. There's a feeling of touch within the triangular area of the nose as the breath moves in and out. Just let yourself be aware of that feeling of touch. Breathing in, there is the feeling of touch. Breathing out, there is the feeling of touch. Investigate that feeling of touch just a bit deeper. Notice how, when breathing in, the air feels just a bit cooler than it does when you're breathing out, when the air is warmer from the inside of the body. You feel the warmness of the breath, then the coolness of the breath, then the warmness of the breath. Notice how the in-breath, there is a feeling of dryness compared to the out-breath when there is a feeling of moisture, sensation of moisture in the breath. Just let all of these aspects of the breath be important. Let them be important enough to continue to observe them. And if at any point you're distracted away by anything, in the moment that you notice the distraction, just take the opportunity to return the awareness to the breath. Just come back to the triangular area of the nose, and once again focus on the in-breath and the out-breath, and the in-breath and the out-breath. And those distractions might come up as sounds in the building or in the room, sometimes sounds in our own bodies. But again, this is a moment of recognition that distraction has taken place. This is not a problem. This is a habit pattern of the mind. We can guide the mind back to the triangular area of the nose and reestablish awareness of the breath. And we can do that over and over. It is never a problem to realize that the mind has distracted the awareness away from the breath. And sometimes we'll find that sensations in the body can pull the awareness away. We might become acutely aware of an itch somewhere on the surface of the body. And it can become very difficult to resist the urge to scratch that itch. But you can try the exercise of simply guiding the awareness back to the triangular area of the nose and to the breath, and just let go of that itch, that sensation of the itch. You find that often after just a few moments, that itch has gone away. So in this, you're observing the impermanence of things, you're observing the nature of things to change constantly. And sometimes you might notice that the mind has wandered away in thought, remembering something from earlier in the day, or planning something, just picturing something. If you notice that, consider it as a wonderful moment of recognition. Guide the awareness back to the breath, back to the triangular area of the nose, and focus once again. And even if this focus only lasts for 2 or 3 breaths before it's broken up by another distraction, that's okay. This is the practice of breathing meditation. Just come back to the breath over and over, over and over. Now let's share a few minutes of silent meditation together, just watching the breath. A few minutes of silent meditation together, and then I'll sound the bell to end this practice. Take a little time. Come on back. No hurry. Move around in your body a little bit. Get some of the joints moving again. I know for me, those first few steps after meditating for a while are interesting steps. The struggle sometimes. Here's a little, this isn't actually a poem this week, but this is from the Sutta Nipata, which is one of the Dhamma teachings. And so this is actually the recorded words of the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, the historical Buddha. So in this one he says, "This I do now declare. After investigation, there is nothing among the doctrines that such a one as I would embrace. Seeing misery in philosophical views, without adopting any of them, searching for truth, I saw inward peace. Not by any philosophical opinion, not by tradition, not by knowledge, not by virtue and holy works can anyone say that purity exists, nor by absence of philosophical opinion, by absence of tradition, by absence of knowledge, by absence of virtue and holy works either. Having abandoned these without adopting anything else, let one, calm and independent, not desire any resting place. One who thinks oneself equal to others or distinguished or low, for that very reason disputes. But one who is unmoved under those three conditions, for that person the notions equal and distinguished do not exist. The sage for whom the notions equal and unequal do not exist, would he say, this is true? Or with whom should he dispute, saying this is false? With whom should he enter into dispute? An accomplished person does not, by a philosophical view or by thinking, become arrogant, for he is not of that sort. Not by holy works, nor by tradition is he to be led. He's not to be led into any of the resting places of the mind. For one who is free from views, there are no ties. For one who is delivered by understanding, there are no follies. But those who grasped after views and philosophical opinions, they wander about in the world annoying people." So I like that one. A little bit of humor from the Buddha, just talking about how some people get really attached to the ideas and the philosophies, and they want to talk about that and share that. Sometimes there's a good place for that, but quite often we find that they're kind of missing the point. And that by just letting go, that's where the freedom is. Just letting go. There's no need to have to establish a system of belief for yourself. You can just let go. Kind of like with the tension in the body when we meditate. You don't have to really think about that a whole lot or rationalize it a whole lot or analyze why it's there or why it's not there sometimes. It's just let it go, and there's the peace. Let it go, and there's the peace. So, just a good thing to think about and focus. We'll get into a new teaching tonight. We're going to talk about Panya, wisdom, We're going to talk about Samma Sankappa, which is right intention. And the handout looks like this. And I think we handed it out last week, but I'm not sure, was everybody here last week? And there's more too. If anybody wants another copy, that's fine. Plenty of them.
We get a star because we brought them.
You brought them.
Thank you.
That's great.
You guys,
I'm good. I'm good.
Thank you, Cheryl. So we're going to talk about this idea of Samma Sankappa, which is right intention. Sometimes that's translated as right thought, and we'll get into that a little bit. But for the introduction here, Samma Sankappa is the second step in the Noble Eightfold Path, falling within the category of panya, or wisdom. So right intention or right thought is a product of wisdom. Samma Sankappa is Pali for right intention. It's also sometimes translated as right thought, right resolve, and right aspiration, with right intention and right thought being the most popular translations. So we'll kind of work with those, right intention and right thought. So we are on the last of the Eightfold Path, the steps on the Eightfold Path. Remember that there really is no official number 1 in the Eightfold Path, no official number 8, but we happen to approach them beginning with the ethical conduct category and then mental development, and now we're into wisdom. It is also common for these to be taught starting with wisdom, starting with right view and right intention. So there's no right or wrong way to do this. What we find, though, is as we work with these in our daily life, they just show up all the time. So one moment in the morning, it might be a right speech issue.
Excuse me.
That's okay. And a little later on, it might be a right effort issue, and then it might be a right intention issue. And so all day long, we're dealing with different aspects of the Eightfold Path. And most days, we encounter all 8 of them. What we discover is that when we practice right effort, that it supports right mindfulness. And when we practice right speech, it supports right intention. So again, like spokes on a wheel, the way this is so often depicted is all of these support each other. And so it's important to work with them all equally. And when we get into right intention, one of the things I like about this step on the path is that it is all about our mindset. And so it becomes something we practice, but also something we learn from and gain wisdom from through observation of our own experiences. So this is a really interesting one. This is where we're almost looking at our mind and our experience of being as a laboratory where we can make observations of what we're thinking, of what is happening as a result of that, and we see, okay, these are the results. You know, and that's really what karma is in the teaching, is that everything we do produces some sort of a result. And when we act in a skillful way, the result is skillful. When we act in an unskillful way, the result is unskillful. So we have this real laboratory that we can work with, and we can just see the results of these things. And again, this is one of those things where every day you're going to experience multiple opportunities to do that. Where sometimes it might be something as simple as me just sort of feeding my mind with stories about something that might not go right. You know, it's kind of a simple thing, and we all do that. We kind of think, oh, what if this happens? You know, this little thing. Well, then we notice, you know, that's what we just did there. That little thought, that's action. That's karma. And it produces results. So when I entertain those thoughts, what if this bad thing happens? Then I tend to answer that question with, well, I think it would be like this, or I think it would be like that. And so I sort of live that unpleasant experience. I live that scenario of, if this bad thing happens, I'm going to feel scared or hurt, or, my life is going to be difficult. So it's just something really simple that we can observe. It's not a super complicated thing. It's something that's just very basic. And we can just watch it come up, notice how it works out when we're unskillful or when we're not mindful. We just sort of let the habits of the mind take us through. And we can notice how it all works out when we are skillful or when we are mindful and we decide to guide the mind. A little thing I wrote in relation to this, it's not in the handout, but I wanted to share it. Everything is interconnected in multitudinous ways. It's difficult to comprehend, in fact, the ways in which our lives are connected to the lives of others and to the world around us. Not one breath, not one blink of the eyes is unimportant. Every one of these mundane experiences is actually an opportunity for awakening into complete liberation. So work with what you have in front of you. Just this. Just this. See the world through the eyes of a Buddha, through your own eyes. Let go. Work with what's in front of you. And seeing through the eyes of a Buddha, that doesn't mean that you're somehow seeing through the eyes of Siddhartha Gautama, but it means that you're seeing through the eyes of a person who has this awakened understanding. That I know that when I generate a lot of greed, that the result is that I feel a certain way. I feel like I don't have enough, or I feel like I'm being judged on not having enough. So you can notice the effect of when I generate greed, that's an unskillful thing to do, and the result is unskillful, unhelpful, unpleasant. Or you can observe how when somebody you know needs just a few words of encouragement or love or acceptance, or just a pat on the back and say, it's going to be okay, I'm here with you, you'll notice right away that's skillful. Anything you do that contributes to the peacefulness, the well-being, the happiness, the balance of another individual, that's a wholesome, skillful action, whether it's a word or physical action. Anything you do that leads to unhappiness or pain or difficulty in another person, and there isn't some skillful thing behind it, like maybe shouting at a toddler not to touch, don't put your fingers inside the fan. You might shout, make the toddler cry because you scare them, but that's the intention, is to protect them. But with minor exceptions like that, anything you do or anything you say that is upsetting someone, leading to their lack of balance or peacefulness, that's unskillful or unwholesome. So you could just work with that very simple karmic process. Skillful, wholesome actions produce skillful, wholesome results for others and for me. I see it right away, and it feels good. It feels good when I perform skillful, wholesome actions. And it sort of transcends, even if maybe the results aren't that great, but just that effort to help others, just that effort to do what's right, it's so transformative and so powerful. So I just wanted to kind of dig into that a little bit. So the experience that we have by working with this, just the noticing the karmic effects of our words and our deeds, this really generates this Bhavana Maya Panya, this deepest form of wisdom, which is the wisdom that we derive through lived experience. There's a little Maha Satipatthana Sutta where the Buddha says to a group of monks, and the word bhikkhus, this is towards the top of page 2. He uses the word bhikkhus. Sometimes that word is translated as monks. The literal translation of that is beggars. So, the monks in the ancient tradition, they didn't have any food or really any possessions other than some robes and a bowl and beads and maybe some written scriptures. So they were often called bhikkhus, beggars. So he says, and what, bhikkhus, is right thought? Thoughts directed toward liberation from sensuality, thoughts free from ill will, and thoughts free from cruelty. This, bhikkhus, is called right thought. So, to touch on those a little bit, what is thoughts directed to liberation from sensuality? Now, sensuality, it could refer to sexuality, and if you're a monk, that might be a particularly important thing to try and direct your thoughts away from. If you've taken a vow of celibacy for a period of time. So, that probably would be very helpful. But on a very practical level for most of us, that sensuality thing is, a lot of times it comes up as wanting stuff because we think it'll make us feel better or make us feel happier, So, and I've talked about like the idea of, I've got a car that's older and it's got some rust on it and it doesn't make me quite feel the way it used to. And so maybe if I get a new car, I'll have kind of that, that good feeling. I'll have that sort of charge that I remember from the last time I had a new car. Well, there's nothing intrinsically wrong with that. But if you get a new car, odds are it's going to be expensive, maybe a little more than you wanted to pay. Your insurance will be higher. You'll have a monthly payment. You'll be worrying about keeping it scratch-free in the parking lots and keeping it clean. And sooner or later, because we know things are impermanent, things are changing, things are arising and passing away, the new car that we get, it's not going to produce those same pleasant feelings later on. So what this is really doing is it's reminding us, all that sensuality stuff that we go after. I mean, it might be fun for a little while, but it doesn't really produce lasting results of happiness or satisfaction. So just be aware of that. That's wisdom. Just be aware of that when you're going into it. Do you need the new car? Maybe you do, in which case, great, get it. Or get the new car and get it with a complete awareness of the impermanence of it. Maybe you need one because you need something dependable. But there's this awareness. We bring this wisdom to it, that the sensuality, desire for sensuality just for sensuality's sake, because we think it's going to give us some sort of lasting pleasure, it doesn't usually work out that way. But when we go into things, thoughts directed toward liberation from sensuality, boy, there is a really good, no strings attached, pleasant feeling from that. Like just, I've got the old car. I've got a Toyota that's 10 years old. And it's got a few dings on it, and it's got a few rust spots on it. And, so I don't worry where I park. And I don't worry about if somebody else dings the car. I maybe prefer that they don't, but, it's an older car. But it gets me where I need to go, and I don't mind if my dog gets in and she gets the seats a little muddy, because it's not a new car. And so this liberation from sensuality is really quite helpful. Or just from other sensual type things. I had the new parking lot put in for the meditation center. That was expensive, and I found myself kind of uptight about, oh, am I going to get oil spots on it from my car? Am I going to get ruts in it from this or that? And it seemed like in a period of about a week, I did all three of those things. This was the other week. I borrowed Darlene's Jeep and trailer so I could haul a bunch of building supplies over there. And it was a hot day, and I parked it in such a way that I put some tire tracks on the edge of the driveway because it was sitting right on the edge of it. And then I called for the utility lines to be marked out because I needed to put the signposts in for the front. And so they came and they spray painted dots on the driveway. And then I got some oil spots on it. And so it's like, it's one of those things, as long as you're holding on to that, I mean, it kind of just eats at you. But when you look at it and say, oh, well, 5 years from now, am I going to care about any of it? No, I'm not. So can I maybe not worry about it so much now? Yeah, I think so. And like when Sarah came out to look at the space, wanting to do some yoga classes where she brings in the small dumbbells and things, she was concerned about not wanting to, kind of ding up the new floor. And so I kind of felt like, well, it's bound to happen sooner or later. And if it happens with something like this, where we're doing something that helps people, then that's kind of a good way to ding up the floor. So, so there's just ways to kind of let go of that sensuality. But none of them is like a magical trick where you're so spiritual that you're just above it all. But so much of it is just wisdom. It's just looking at things based on past experience and knowing how all this stuff goes, and then kind of remembering what Ajahn Chah said, which is, if you can let go a little bit, you'll have a little bit of peace. If you can let go a lot, you'll have a lot of peace. And if you can let go completely, you'll have complete peace. And so you just see that playing out over and over in my life and the lives of other people in so many simple ways. And most of those, that's the way we work with it. These simple things just, they add up. They add up to a lot of peace. A lot of peace. There are what are called 3 types of right intention. And again, you can just substitute the word thought for intention if you'd like. But the first is the intention of renunciation. And in the context of the Buddha teaching monks, you can understand that renunciation might have a deeper meaning. But really, I look at this as a readiness to let go. You're sort of poised, just kind of ready to let go. Stuff's going to happen. Sometimes we're on guard about stuff happening. We're sort of ready to get upset, or we're ready to get angry or bent out of shape about it. I felt like that. Everybody feels like that, I think, where you're just sort of geared up. But you can establish this intention of a readiness to let go. Renunciation was the word the Buddha used for teaching monks, but for the rest of us, householders, as we were called back in those days, that was anybody who wasn't part of the monastic order, renunciation can be thought of as an immediate willingness to let go of craving and aversion in our day-to-day lives. So for monks, renunciation was often discussed with regard to sensual pleasures, because they had given up all their worldly possessions to join the monastic order. Renouncing sense pleasures applies to householders as well, but the Buddha identified 3 types of craving that's important for us to be aware of. So again, there's that kama tana, which is craving for sensual pleasures. Again, not thinking of those as something you need to feel guilty about, or that they're evil or wrong, but that craving for sense pleasures isn't going to provide me with lasting happiness, and a lot of times it provides me with a little bit of a feeling of unhappiness. And for me, I share the one over and over just because I think it's real common. I love ice cream. I love sweets, and there are those periods of time where I'll really want some, and so I'll find myself kind of late in the evening driving to go get some ice cream. I'll take it home and I'll have a great big bowl of it, and I'll enjoy it. I really enjoy eating it, and then the next morning I'll wake up and I'll think, I shouldn't have done that, because I'm exercising. I'm trying to keep my body fat down a little bit, just so it's easier on my joints and things. And so I just sort of look at it as, well, I kind of just dialed back the clock on the exercise that I've done for the past few weeks. And so this is not helping me reach that fitness goal. So it's this awareness that the simple craving for sensual pleasures can oftentimes lead to, not necessarily feeling very good about it. The second one is called Bhava Tana, which means craving for existence. That's the way it's often translated. This is simple, though. Craving for existence, just wanting things to be a certain way in our lives. I want to be considered successful by my friends and family, or I want to be married, or I want to be single, or I want to make a certain amount of money, or I want to have a certain degree attached to my name. There's just so many things that we think about. I want things to be a certain way in my life, or I want my family to look a certain way, or I want people in my family to be a certain way in terms of interaction. So it's called craving for existence, but if you look at it in terms of just wanting things to be a certain way, how much dis-ease and sort of discontent comes out of that. The third one is Vibhava Tana, which is craving for non-existence. So just kind of the flip side of that, wanting things not to be a certain way. I don't want my loved ones to leave me, whether it's through old age and sickness and death, or through proximity. I don't want them to move out of the state, or I don't want them to move out of the country. I don't want my body to get older. I don't want my hair to fall out. I don't want my eyesight to get bad. Just showing up in very subtle, very normal sort of garden variety ways, but this craving for non-existence. So when we see this, again, none of this is saying, so you shouldn't have these feelings. These are pretty normal feelings to have. It's just know what is this going to do in the rest of my life. Since we know that craving leads to our own suffering, we cultivate mindfulness so that we notice when craving starts to arise in the mind. The intention of renunciation, that's this first type of right intention. The intention of renunciation means that we are continuously ready and willing to let go of craving in order to free ourselves from the inevitable suffering associated with it. So it's just noticing, am I craving something right now? Am I really attached? Because if I'm really attached, odds are I'm going to be kind of disappointed and frustrated or worried and stressed. And so there is this intention that I'm ready to let go of that. That's one type of right intention. I have the intention of being willing to let go. The second type of right intention is the intention of goodwill. And boy, is this one ever transformative. It seems simple, but this is just amazing. So you establish a mind in loving kindness. Metta Bhavana means to cultivate loving kindness towards others. This is the sincere wish that others are loved, cared for, happy, and well. That's just amazingly transformative. Cultivating goodwill, cultivating metta. And of course, we do that every week. We sometimes talk about it in the beginning of the class, and we always finish up with this cultivation of metta, loving kindness towards others. And boy, does that ever change the heart. It changes the way we see others. It changes what we think is important. It changes what we think is necessary and worthwhile. So just working on that practice of cultivating loving kindness towards others. The sincere wish that others are loved and cared for and happy and well. And it's amazing what that does as a way to counteract the feeling of greed or the feeling of self-centeredness that we often get. And a lot of that's just habit. You know, I think a lot of people who are in general not greedy or not self-centered still experience those feelings of greed and self-centeredness just sort of out of habit. So the way to counteract that is with this feeling of loving kindness towards others, the sincere wish that others are loved, cared for, happy, and well. Counteracts, kind of counterweights this greedy feeling and leaves us just feeling peaceful and joyful, that feeling of love. And then the third is the intention of harmlessness. This is a mind that is established in compassion. Karuna Bhavana means to cultivate compassion for all beings. This is the sincere wish that others can be free from suffering, fear, pain, and distress. There's a word that is sometimes associated with this, ahimsa, A-H-I-M-S-A. That's a Sanskrit word, and it means cause no harm or cause no injury. It's oftentimes associated with the Jains, the Jain religion over in the area of India. And there's a symbol that you might be familiar with. It's just a hand like this, and then it's got a little symbol of some words in the hand. But that hand means ahimsa. It means non-harm, non-injury. So along with cultivating this feeling of loving kindness towards others and how that counteracts greed, this intention of harmlessness counteracts ill will. Cultivating compassion, sincerely wishing that others can be free from suffering, fear, pain, and distress. And then really taking that as far as you can. Kind of testing the boundaries with it, like maybe when you see a news story about someone who maybe hurt someone else, and it's real tough to cultivate compassion sometimes for those people. You know, sometimes our normal reaction is to say, well, I think they do deserve to suffer a little bit. But then when we notice how that feels in here, when we say that, then right away it becomes evident that compassion is definitely the way. If you seek peace, if you seek freedom, if you seek liberation, and if you seek joy, these things, these three are the things that you should be doing with your intention. So you don't have to worry about being the judge or the jury in regard to what other people have done, but cultivating the, in spite of that, if this person could have just always been free from pain and suffering inflicted upon them by other people, other beings, other circumstances, that probably would have miraculously changed their life to a degree where they would not have caused suffering to other beings. And once again, we're seeing kind of the way karma plays out. So there is working with this intention of harmlessness. So again, those three types of right intention. the intention of renunciation, just the readiness to let go, the being okay with the idea of letting go. Letting go a little, letting go a lot, letting go completely, and witnessing the peace that we feel as a result of that. Establishing the intention of loving kindness towards others, and witnessing how that counteracts our own feelings of greed and self-centeredness, and how this feeling of loving kindness is so much more wonderful than any feeling we can get from what we acquire. This feeling of loving kindness is so healing. And then finally, that intention of harmlessness. You can just leave the judgment to others, but cultivate a mind which holds compassion for all beings. I have an article, I wanted to read through it a little bit. This just came out on May 1st, and this is in a publication called The Telegraph. It's a British publication, and it said, "The secret to honesty revealed. It feels better." And as I read through this, I saw that there were a lot of tie-ins to these 3 right intentions. But this is one where there's been some research on it. And time again, I find that there has been clinical or scholarly research done on basic Buddhist principles that prove them to be correct over and over. So this one, I'll just read the article briefly. "It is a mystery that has perplexed psychologists and philosophers since the dawn of humanity. Why are most people honest?" And in my experience, most people really are honest. Most people really are. But the question, why? Now, using a complex array of MRI machines and electronic devices, scientists claim to have found the answer. Researchers at University College London discovered that a physical level in the brain finds decency far more satisfying than deception. And this is a British publication or periodical. And so when they use the word decency here, really what they're talking about is virtue or ethical conduct. So that's kind of what decency means in this context. But they discovered that at a physical level, the brain finds decency or ethical conduct far more satisfying than deception or unethical conduct. The trial revealed that despite accumulating a large amount of money, most participants derived no deep-seated satisfaction if the success was gained at the expense of others. Published in the journal Nature and Neuroscience, the study indicates that at least at a psychological level, the old adage that crime doesn't pay is right. When we make decisions, a network of brain regions calculates how valuable our options are, said Dr. Molly Crockett, who led the research. Ill-gotten gains evoke weaker responses in this network, which may explain why most people would rather not profit from harming others. Our results suggest the money just isn't as appealing. The second team scanned volunteers' brains as they decided whether to anonymously inflict pain on themselves or strangers in exchange for money. And what they did was they had these little electric shocks where if you put your finger in this thing, it would just give your finger a little jolt. So not a horrific permanent pain, but just this temporary. So the experiment involved 28 couples of participants who were paired off and given the ability to give each other small electric shocks. They were given the option of selecting sums of money that were related to a shock, either for themselves or for their partner. The researchers noticed that as they made their decisions, a region of the brain called the stratum, I guess it is, is key to understanding the value, and that was activated. MRI imaging found that this brain network was far more active when the participants gained money while inflicting pain on themselves than on another, suggesting they found it instinctively more valuable. Our findings suggest the brain internalizes the moral judgments of others, simulating how much others might blame us for potential wrongdoing, even when we know our actions are anonymous. The scans also revealed that an area of the brain involved in making moral judgments, the lateral prefrontal cortex, was most active in trials where inflicting pain yielded minimal profit. In an allied study, participants were asked to make moral judgments about decisions to harm others for profit. It showed that when people refused to profit from harming others, this region was communicating with the stratum. The researchers believe this shows the normal societal moral rules are visible in the form of neurological signaling, and that these disrupt the value we might otherwise place on ill-gotten gains. And it goes on a little bit with some more detail about the research studies, but really, I saw this and I thought, this is really what it is. It's finding scientific proof of those three types of intention and how they're important and how they really make a difference in the way we feel. One of the things that led me to this path many years ago was when I was in the business world and I had worked my way up, and I was at the position of chief financial officer at this point in time, and it was my responsibility to make a lot of decisions about what the company would spend money on and what the company would not spend money on. I was also, my performance was judged based on how I could do for reducing costs and increasing profitability. And so right away, this kind of moral dilemma would come up of, well, if we reduce the rate at which we're giving people raises, that will increase profitability. Or if we can somehow get people to work more hours in this way or in that way, a lot of time is spent in business kind of trying to figure out how to get more out of people without giving them more or giving them a little less. And it was just such a real experience for me that I just started to feel like the joy of those accomplishments was evaporating, and that me getting a bigger bonus by maybe reducing the amount that we would cover for the insurance benefits for employees, it left me feeling hollow. And so that experience, that really echoes what this study said. And it also echoes what 2,500 years earlier the Dhamma had said with regard to these three intentions and how important they are if your goal is to live a life of happiness and peace. And for some people, they go through a period of time where their goal is not happiness and peace, but it's acquisition and money and possessions and greed and things like that. But I think that given enough time, most of those folks kind of realize there's just nothing there. It's hollow. So using these three right intentions as kind of a guide, we can maneuver ourselves through our daily existence, aware of the law of karma, aware of how these three intentions can shape our lives for the better, and we can really start to experience that happiness. It really, really works. It's just like, try it. Just try it here or there. Little ways. Just try it and see what happens. Just watch. Just watch and see how it feels. And you'll be amazed at how transformative it is. It's just one of the more beautiful things about the practice. But
Isn't that kind of another word for conscience?
I think so. I think, the conscience is there. I think maybe what conscience is our ability to reflect objectively on our own actions and to think about them maybe in an objective way, in the same way we might evaluate the actions of another person. Because so often I think our conscience is, we see things through our own view. It's like, well, I deserve that, or nobody knows how hard I worked for this, I really, I deserve that.
Excuses.
Yeah, I think so. And so that conscience starts to come up, which is just, we somehow have the grace to just look at things objectively and say, is that really true? Is this, if you were to, if you were to get something without paying for it, would you enjoy it? And the answer is no, really. I went to pick up some groceries, and then I picked up a Mother's Day card, and I put the Mother's Day card on the seat of the cart because I didn't want it to get messed up. And I went through self-checkout, so I checked out all my groceries, and then I was just about out of the store when I realized the Mother's Day card was still there, and then I hadn't paid for it. And it's like, I knew I could have just walked out of there with it, but I thought, I don't want to call my mom on Mother's Day and say Happy Mother's Day and know I sent her a stolen card, It was like it would somehow just kind of spoil that. So I just parked my cart and I ran back in. I said, I got to pay for my Mother's Day card, and I did. And it's like, it was a few bucks, but it feels a lot better,
Yeah.
So, yeah, kind of that conscience thing that you talk about. But we'll conclude this one next week with a few more things that we'll talk about. But we better end it for now. I'm glad you feel that way. It
Yeah,
is.
it really is.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. So everyone, keep in mind one more class here next Tuesday, and then we'll be moving to the center. So, so for now, let's just take a moment, and we'll cultivate these wonderful types of consciousness. The awareness that there are beings in this world who suffer. Some are humans and some are non-humans, but there are beings who suffer, and to think about these beings and truly, deeply, and sincerely wish for their freedom from this suffering, that they can be free from suffering and from its causes. Now you might think, well, what good is a wish? A wish doesn't really do much. This is right intention. These wishes become your intentions, become your thoughts, and they shape your reality. And so the second one, may all beings be surrounded by love and kindness. And if you have an intention of goodwill, it is much more likely that this will come about. May all beings be joyful and happy. And you become aware of this in a way that is appreciative joy, that you don't have to win the lottery to be joyful or happy, or have like super fortunate things happen to you from a material perspective, but that other people can smell a flower and there's happiness. Other people can hold someone's hand and there's happiness. So it's these simple things, appreciative joy. And then finally, equanimity, which is that sense of peacefulness and freedom, but just when you know that you're not stuck in craving, and when you know that you're not stuck in aversion, there's just a real peacefulness to that intention of renunciation, that willingness to entertain the idea of letting go. That's very transformative. And that gives birth to equanimity. So with that, I'll sound this bell, but before I do, I'll say, may all of you sharing this time with me tonight, may you be truly, truly happy. Namaskar, everybody. Thank you for coming. Sorry I went a little long on this one. And we'll see you next week.